everyone, welcome back, and I have a fun video to show for beginners on Procreate that need some tips and ideas of pens they could use. Note that although I still have my preferred pen pressure setting, I'm making sure to duplicate and use these pens for drawing and erasing at their basic form, like you just got Procreate and see this, to ensure that all is fair. I recommend anyone to adjust using settings, even if it's just streamline or smoothing. But for now, let's get started. The first pen I recommend that is very good, one that I even call reliable, is the Servo Tool. This is a very smooth, fast, and sharp pen that follows your control. The shape of it can be annoying at times, but overall, it's a very good pen. The eraser works really good too. It makes very clean line art. That being said, there are some downsides. The first one being it's sharp, although I just complimented that. It's more of how you try to use it, such as if you use the transform tool, any other brush as an eraser, or even try to blend some parts. It will drastically show. Most brushes have this odd, blurry end of the lines that give a soft feel, but the Servo pen takes that aside and it's just always sharp with rigid lines. It makes working with the bucket tool easier, but it's also very precise with it. So if there's a gap or weird overlap, it'll show. It is also super pressure dependent, which I like a lot. It's great practice if you're trying to get better at pen pressure sensitivity. I rarely ever change the brush size because of this, but it could also go super huge because the odd triangle shape. I also feel as though this brush can allow me to add little details that I usually don't do. Something nice and soft. And with some fixing up here, I'm pretty much done with the line art. Overall, I would give this pen a 10 out of 10. Really good. Next is the Studio Pen, which is my second recommendation for beginners. It's similar to the Servo pen, but it's also a lot more easier. It also isn't as pressure dependent, however it can be messed with pressure wise, so you get some decent practice. It also has a lot more softer lines thanks to the blurry effect I mentioned earlier, and is pretty smooth. It's also a really good eraser, which I use myself unironically for drawing and coloring too. It's a nice solid pen that can suit many styles, primarily cartoonish and maybe round, heavy characters. For my style, you can see that I'm adding a lot of heavy line art at the bottom. It's because if I were to color and add shading, I would prefer the shading at the bottom. It adds depth as well as make the hoodie and the body feel weighted. It also helps to have some taper ends, like at the end of the hoodie right there. I always like having thick to thin line art. It's always good to mess around with that because it makes the drawing feel a bit more alive and 3D, while also still retaining that cute form of whatever style you're going for. This is the perfect example of how I like to add line art. Sometimes I use the bucket tool to help me, and yeah, with these finishing touches, I'm pretty much done. Overall, a really good beginner-friendly pen that I recommend anyone to use. Now, it's this brush. This brush is called the Bono line. I don't like the monoline. I know it's weird to say that and then use it. Why would I show it? It's because its unique ability for it to be a singular stroke with no pen pressure sensitivity. The monoline is a unique brush that doesn't change size, it doesn't taper, or anything like that. Although I believe that pressure sensitivity helps in a lot of styles and is good to practice with, some artists don't really like to mess with that kind of stuff. I know I used to resent it back then, as well as there are some styles that don't work with it. A very good example is those bubbly art styles that I've seen artworks with strawberry milk cartons or flowers, or the people with the see-through bodies and liquid in their heads. Really beautiful, really cool. Or it can help with those lineless artworks that are really smooth. It can help with lineless art in a way, always having a nice round edge. I believe it takes some experimenting. I tried tapering the lines at one point. I just can't. This definitely isn't my click of a brush, but it could be yours, which is why I recommend trying it depending on your style. So overall, really decent pen, just not for me. Might be for you though. Try testing it out. This next pen is a brush pen, and this brush is specifically for calligraphy pen. It has an odd rectangular shape that feels like pen pressure sensitivity just from twisting the pen a different direction. I know a lot of artists like the feel of this, which is why I bothered to even mention it. I also want to mention another pen similar to this, which it doesn't have this opacity thing that I'm messing with right now, like in the ear right there, but instead it has really nice texture. I also think it works at a different angle, not sure. Again, you can always mess with that in the settings. But for now, let's focus on the brush pen. The pressure sensitivity, it's there, but it's also pretty faint. It's not my personal favorite because I prefer for the line weight to follow my pen rather than having to keep figuring out what direction of the weight. But again, this could be anyone else's pen, and it's actually really fun to use. I wouldn't mind messing with it once in a while. And the other ink pen I was talking about is the Jess and Skin ink. I believe I said that right. Which just has a nice softer texture feel that you'll see here once I write it down. It's nice if you work at different angles and just want that nice soft but sharp feeling. Yeah, it's pretty good. Overall, these two calligraphy brushes are up to what you want if you like directional weight. Really nice. On to our next option, which is the shell brush. I forgot to mention it at the end, but another similar brush is the chalk brush. The brush gives a nice color pencil feel that is smooth and very soft. It's really cool, and it works well for a beautiful storybook art kind of style, and I often see it on TikTok. I know there was this tutorial, I can't find it anymore, but there was a tutorial to mess with the streamline, and it made a nice consistent pencil style. Really nice. A lot of people even take advantage of the fact that it's so soft with thin texture lines. Make liner a really nice faint to hand color like a painting. It's best to note that if you do use this brush, you'll most likely have to hand color since the bucket tool is most likely to leak out very often. You can always adjust it, but there are going to be those times where you have to double up the line art and it kind of be pointless since you lose the texture and grain. As an eraser though, it is pretty finicky since it also has texture like the pen, meaning that it doesn't erase all the way, which can be fine if you're trying to keep up with that style and if you're hand coloring, but using the bucket tool can also be really annoying, so I recommend just using something like Studio Pen for that reason. Overall, beautiful brush and can be edited to do more if you like. Have fun. Last but not least, Tinderbox, which is an odd option in addition for those experiencing Procreate, but I can explain why. Tinderbox is one of my favorite inking pens because of the fact that it has texture while still being really thick for the bucket tool, as well as its tapering and pressure sensitivity. Like it could go really thick if you just tilt the Apple pen to the side. It's beautiful. Although it takes some finessing to make it work. Primarily because of the fact that this liner will not make up for the words I'm saying, since I didn't realize how much streamline and smoothing I must have added to make it fit for me. The liner is very wiggly, so a lot of my liner through this looks like I drew with my left hand. I'm sorry. I want to make up for this. And just like the shale brush, I wouldn't recommend it as an eraser, especially this one, because it still has texture. So once you try to erase whatever, it's gonna be like 10% there, but you could barely see it. And it gets really annoying when I try to use the bucket tool and then there's like a visible line there somehow. And it's like, oh yeah, I used to erase there because there was something there I didn't want. And it's just really annoying having to go back and forth. And it's even more annoying trying to mess with the bucket tool. But yeah. I just want to mention this one because I like it a lot, second to the Servo Tool. It's a hit or miss, but it can have a really good effect of what you want to do, like a handwriting or doodle in your illustrations. It's a pretty decent pen. And with that, those are my 6 recommendations for ink pens in Procreate. I still talked more on the uses and benefits as well as disadvantage of the pens specifically rather than some tips and tricks. So if you do want more of that, let me know. In a separate video I could talk about that or more ink pens. Thank you for watching and stay safe out there.